Yeah, go ahead.
So did you know that like DNA sequencing is getting exponentially cheaper?
Yeah, I did know about that because I have friends who do that sort of research, and suddenly they can actually afford to do their research without these enormous grants.
That indicates that we're coming closer to that centralized source, though, because people that has huge medical predictive power.
I think that the benefits of the centralized system are becoming increasingly great, and I think that the entrenched interests can only hold out against those increasing benefits for so long. But I don't think that there's a complete one-to-one relationship, because I think you need to displace the whole system that we currently have. But yeah, are the benefits of that system getting enormously bigger? Absolutely. I also think the benefits of education going online are getting enormous, and that's going to overwhelm the ability of institutions like my employer to keep control over the rents that come from educating people like you. So, yeah. Yeah, go ahead, David.
I just had a question
Yeah.
about one of Friedman's arguments. He
Yeah.
argues that the certification is naturally for the free market and won't actually end up. It might end up monopolistic in the end, but he doesn't feel that it's necessarily will do that, and I don't think he gives too much of a argument after that about that.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't it go naturally? Why is monopoly not really?
Well, I mean, the problem is that you could have people, stealing the information from the firm that's actually doing most of the stuff and then dressing it up more nicely and getting more of the profits, and that would undermine the incentives to create information. So if you could maintain a monopoly, you might be able to supply it in a private way, but the problem is maintaining that and making sure that they can charge people for access to that information, and I think that's going to be difficult. But yeah, Joe.
A possible example where medical technology has really taken on to be medical imaging or radiology.
Yeah.
There's been a huge, I guess even over the last 50 years of X-rays, MRIs, CAT scans, PET. It's really been
Yeah.
a huge.
You mean outsourcing or just improvement in technology?
Both.
Yeah.
A lot of outpatient
Yeah.
stuff. It doesn't have to be the big hospital conglomerate that does it. You
Yeah.
can do it at a small private place.
Yeah, those guys are supposed to be much more efficient. Yeah. Anybody else, or do you want to? Yeah. What's your name?
Wesley.
Wesley. Yeah.
Considering the current setup of the medical insurance system, how do you deal with removing licensure, but then ensuring that these insurance companies don't have to pay for care for people going to people who might be the equivalent of the faith healers or chiropractors or any kind of
Yeah.
non-licensed.
Yeah, that's a good problem. I mean, I think a lot of there would probably be first still a certification system, and B, the insurers would, if the certification system was too corrupt, probably set up an alternative system of their own. And actually, the size of the insurance companies is one benefit that might allow for some of these certification systems to be provided privately. As long as the insurance industry is sufficiently concentrated, they might be able to get a lot of the rents associated with that as insurers. So that's actually an interesting aspect of the industry. Yeah, go ahead, Jacob.
Could the non-certified medicine be so cheap that insurance wasn't necessary for people who chose to go?
I mean, I think that there's still going to be a lot of devices, and we're going to have to give IP on medicines, and that's going to keep things fairly expensive. But it's a question how much of it is labor and how much of it is. Yeah, I think I don't know. It's possible. It's possible. Yeah. What's your name?
Miranda?
What?
Miranda?
Marana. Yeah.
Do you think if that there would be some sort of maybe social people with lower incomes would have to go to the less qualified doctors because they can't afford the higher doctors. So,
Yeah.
It'll lead to a stratification of medical care
Yeah.
toward people of lower classes.
Yeah. I mean, that doesn't happen in our current system at all, luckily. So, no. But no. I mean, I'm sure that will occur. I mean, there's a general issue, which is that a lot of people say, oh, if you do any sort of reform, that'll lead to inequality in this particular area. But they forget the fact that in the whole rest of our economy, there's enormous inequalities in all sorts of areas. So the question is whether there's something incredibly special about health, or that makes it just fundamentally different than all other areas of the economy where we have enormous inequalities. I mean, another thing like that, which is even more controversial, is, I don't know if you guys will get a chance to look at it, but there's a problem that you guys will do on the problem set that sort of hints at a scheme that I proposed, which is that you should be allowed to buy votes in a particular way on elections. So a lot of people would say, oh, but that's going to give the rich so much more influence. But the truth is there's all sorts of aspects of the social contract over which the rich have enormously more influence than the poor. They get to live in houses that are really nice. They get to send their kids to really nice schools or live in neighborhoods where their kids naturally get to go to really nice schools and all these sorts of things. And so the question is, it might actually be beneficial to the poor people if they're able to choose the areas of their life where they want to give up a little bit in order to get more in the other areas. Not to say we shouldn't be reducing inequality. In fact, you'll see I'm quite in favor of that. But, conditional on that, having to have equality in some areas in exchange for them not being able to get more of what they really value, like maybe, education for their children or whatever in another area, not so obvious that makes sense. Yeah, go ahead. What's your name?
Kay.
Okay.
So, don't you think that health is kind of like a different sort of animal from a lot of other things? Because like mistakes in health very directly affect a person's well-being and way of living, in ways that I don't know, some guy who does your plumbing wrong is kind of different because if my arm gets chopped out, that very personally affects me.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent that's true, but all the time you and I are making decisions that are going to affect our health in exchange for something else. So for example, you might speed on your way to work in order to try to get a few more hours of work in, or you might go bungee jumping for fun, or there's all sorts of areas in our lives where we're able to trade off things that affect our health against other things.
Well,
So
that's
yeah,
true.
yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean that we should make this change.
Yeah.
Right. So, for instance, if you had people who were uncertified,
Yeah.
then this, there's an incentive for a lot of people to go to the uncertified doctors, and this might be dangerous in a way that they may not actually understand. Also, so there might
Yeah.
be some sort of informational asymmetries with that, because
Yeah.
I obviously don't really know that much about medicine.
Yeah.
If you tell me I have cancer, I'll probably cry and
Yeah.
probably believe you.
Yeah.
If you're a doctor, but
No, I agree. So I'm not a big fan of a totally decentralized system. In fact, I'm very skeptical of a lot of decentralization because I do think medicine is an area where there's a lot of these asymmetric information problems and so forth. But I just don't think that the current way that licensure work actually solves that. I actually think in some ways it's making it worse because it's actually disrupting the ability to have a more centralized system. So I'm not, as you'll see throughout this course, I'm not really a libertarian, but I do think this is an area where Friedman identified a restriction on the market which actually was really limiting the ability to develop better technologies. I think I should let you guys go, but I'm happy to stay after and talk to you, personally.